So, yeah, welcome back to this afternoon part, the session part 2. We kick it off with policy reasoning, and Yassir, he's working with the CTO on software development and various topics. I think he can explain that a little bit better than me. And he's going to kick it off with policy reasoning right now. Thanks.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so hello. It's a bit of a tough spot right after lunch. So I'll try to take like a fun kind of surprises during the presentation, so don't fall asleep after that nice lunch. Yeah, so let's go right ahead. So yeah, policy reasoning, more specifically using the ODRL profile. So yeah, I'm Yassir Sellami. I'm a software developer at Gaia-X. I've been doing so like for 1 year exactly since TechX last year. And I was right like in the audience, and I like didn't understand most of the things they were talking about. So I hope it won't be the case for you in this presentation. But yeah, let's go briefly through the agenda. The first thing, I'm gonna talk through some definitions. Boring, but we need to go through them so you know a little bit. So first thing, ODRL, so Open Digital Rights Language. So a bit of the main subject of the presentation. Next thing is the verifiable credentials. Then just using those verifiable credentials within a policy definition. Some use cases, so just so you can picture, it's always good to have some examples in mind to be able to picture how it's going to be used. And then the ODRL profile in itself. After that, an example of an actual offer with more code and JSON for the ones looking for that. And then talk about the policy reasoning engine, more specifically just an implementation of one, like any can be conceived, it's not necessarily the one you must have. And then just using ontologies and how they can be used in this context. So yeah, first thing, ODRL. So yeah, ODRL is a policy expression language, and you can see here in the slide, there's a big actual model with all the properties and all the definitions of ODRL, and then a more simplified one where you can see rules such as permissions, prohibitions, or obligations, which have certain actions that can be refined with constraints, and also assigned to parties and target assets. And here you can see in the yellow box, it's a bit of a custom constraint that we're going to be talking about right after. So yeah, next subject, verifiable credentials. It's already been talked about this morning with the Evan presentation. It's the same thing, just I hope it was clear this morning. Otherwise, it's just, it's used in Gaia-X to represent everything from companies, people, services. It also represents any form of credential or permit or license. And the most important part is that these are cryptographically signed by the issuer, so you can check the integrity of the data that is not being changed, and also the legitimacy of the issuer as well. So yeah, we talked about ODRL. So ODRL is, like I said, a policy re-expression language that provides a flexible and interoperable information model to represent statements, so basically to express policies. And then, but the problem is you can just express policies any way you want, but there's no actual way directly in the policy to be able to verify and assess any kind of requests in a trustworthy and verifiable manner. So you probably have seen it come in, but yeah, why not leverage verifiable credentials and ODR policies together in order to have both of the best words of both sides. So yeah, just some use cases. Yeah, here are a lot of Gaia-X use cases, but you can keep in mind that it can be used in any kind of context, not specifically with Gaia-X credentials, any kind of credentials. But here, just for the sake of it, just some use cases here. For example, a catalog only accepting Gaia-X compliant participants. So in this case, we would be using a Gaia-X compliance verifiable credential. Or provider giving access to only certain countries or regions, a very common use case. In this case, you can use also a Gaia-X legal participant verifiable credential in which we can find the information of the geographic location. Also, for example, a company giving access to employees, in the case of right delegation, a government giving access to only certified professionals, for example, for a job offer or something, looking for a driver license. You're going to see that example more in depth afterward. Or an access right given only to Gaia-X members, using, for example, the newly defined the Gaia-X membership VC, one of the surprises of the new things we've developed just recently. You've seen the flyers in the venue. Or something like very simple, it doesn't have to be related to business. It can be just a landlord also outlining the criteria or restrictions for selecting a future tenant. You're going to also see this example right after. And yeah, here we have made some Gaia-X Academy with a lot of courses. And one of the courses concerns policy reasoning. And this part is more like I said, a bit of a fun part to be able to have a more interactive experience. And you can try it for yourself afterward. I'll give you the link. Yeah, just a disclaimer, you might need to go through some prerequisite courses. But yeah, here you can see also, like I said, it's always find it very good to have examples and to be able to picture the use. So here, what this course here is about is to be able to picture a scenario. So there is a provider side and the consumer side. First of all, let's try to start with the provider. And here, are you ready to embark on an adventure? Yes, let's go. Let's go to the next step. So yes, so here the first part, so I'm trying to picture, like I said, trying to picture ourselves in a scenario where I'm the provider with many use cases here, as you can see. For example, an art gallery called Gaia-Art, a curator looking for a new and upcoming artists. For example, a farmer Bob working from Eve Corp looking to sell precious ferment data. Or a landlord, like I said, the previous example, looking to rent a beautiful apartment. So here, next. So in this case, it's going to be the landlord. So let's picture ourselves a landlord, so looking to rent an apartment. And to be able to see how the policy can be expressed, let's add some restrictions. So choose one of these two. Yeah, so in this case, we don't want the future tenant to be able to sublet the apartment. Quite common use case for rental. And after that, we can just generate an ODRL. So here's some actual code. So obviously, it's not like an ODRL that's supposed to be used in production or something like that. It's mainly for educational purposes and just to be able to convey an example and picture a scenario. So you can see here that the policy contains, so it's an offer policy that contains here a permission, so a rule that is permission. The permission is targeting the apartment, so the apartment, and the action is to rent it. But there's also a prohibition, and the prohibition is to sublet that same apartment. So yeah, pretty basic policy according to what we set as restrictions. Yeah, and the next part, so here we're going to try to picture ourselves as the consumer. So let's go to the consumer side. So in this case, some tenant looking to rent an apartment. So here, yeah, some fun kind of use cases for you. Looking, for example, here, there's a Ipsum looking for cheap real estate to set up a sweatshop. Well, yeah, questionable indeed. But yeah, let's start the engine and see if it matches or not. And since the tenant is not looking to sublet the apartment, then it matches. So congrats, Ipsum. You may set up your questionable business in Abina's apartment. So maybe that's the next part. You can set up some kind of moral basis on your policy. It's possible. And yeah, here let's go back right again and just try to picture another scenario. Wait. Yes. Let me go to it. Yeah, so same thing. Let's go back into an adventure again and try to choose for another case, just for the sake of example, like I said. So here we choose, for example, the art gallery, where as the provider we'll be in the art gallery, and the restriction is that we do not want any art generated with the AI. So quite a lot of buzzwords, but yeah, here we can generate the ODRL. And yeah, you can see here, for example, a prohibition to display art. And you can see here the constraint, which is using the ODRL profile. And here you can see, for example, that the OVC credential subject types targets as some kind of imaginary verifiable credential that is of type art metadata. And the left operand target the exact attribute we want to evaluate and test the value of. So here's the credential subject.art.source. And so since it's a prohibition, we do not want to display any art from the source of either AI art or image generators. So here, yeah, it's the offer policy. And the next part, like we've seen before, is the consumer side. So we have two kind of use cases, two possibilities. So if you choose here a prompt engineer, Alan, who can generate pixel art using image generators. So as you might have guessed, since the offer policy requirements, the Alan cannot display the art at Gallery Arts. And next here, you can try it for yourself. Go right ahead and log into the Gaia-X Academy, go through the courses. Like I said, some courses require some prerequisite courses to go through, but you can go right ahead and play with it yourself and go through all the technical details. And yeah, shout out to Julien, who was not able to be with us today, who worked very hard on the Academy. And yeah, let's go to the next thing, which is the ODR profile. So the ODR profile is obviously compatible with the base ODRL information model. It would rely on the ODRL specification, the verifiable credential specification, and JSON path. So it would definitely rely on the specifications without any redefinitions. The aim is to give a clear definition and syntax to be able to express custom constraint values and refer to verifiable credentials. So here we have two additional values for the attributes OVC left operand and OVC subject type, credential subject type, sorry. And for the first one, so OVC left operand, it must contain a JSON path for the intended attribute to evaluate, like we've seen in the example before and some other examples incoming. And we also have the attribute OVC credential subject type, which refers to the actual credential type we want to evaluate. So yeah, like I said, always better, easier to understand with an actual example. So here you can see, again, an ODRL offer with the expression of a permission here to play a certain asset for 5.6 from a provider. And the constraint here is the geographic location. So you can see here on the credential subject type, we are targeting a Gaia-X legal participant. And more specifically, the attribute is on the OVC left operand, so credential subject type, legal address, country, subdivision code. So we are targeting any of the following, which are addresses in the ISO 3106, I believe. Maybe I missed the exact ISO. So here we are targeting the regions of the north of France and Brussels in Belgium. Another quick example here, also mentioned before for the driver license, just picked up some kind of example here for a credential that is the ISO 18013 driver license. And here the actual provider is adding a constraint for the vehicle category code, as you can see on the left operand, and the right operand is C. That means that we want the assignee or the consumer or the target of the policy to be able to have a permit of type C. and that is not expired. You can see on the next part, the left operand targets the expiry date that is not expired. And here, just a quick demo of a wizard. You already seen it maybe with the membership credential. You also can play with it. It's also public. You go ahead and just play with it and try the examples or anything. But it's like I stated here, it's only for demonstration purposes, only for testing, to be able to picture what kind of policy reasoning, how it can be done, and specifically with this ODRL profile. So the first part, to make it easier, we separated that into steps. So we have 4 steps. So the first one is we are the provider again, and we have to express an ODRL policy. So here we have the exact same one we've seen like 2 slides before, which is the restriction on the geolocation, for example, here in the north of France and Brussels. So yeah, it's the same thing, also targeting the Gaia-X legal participant. And here the next step is the consumer who have to input his verifiable credentials, and more specifically, according to what the provider specified, we need to target the Gaia-X legal participant. So the consumer have to give at least the Gaia-X legal participant to be able to evaluate. So here we have in the wizard what we call a local wallet. Again, it's only for testing. It's just stored in the browser. And here you can see the verifiable credential. You can see it's a bit blurry, but you can maybe trust me on this, that there is the legal participant, that there is a country subdivision code which is on the north of France with the exact same value from the provider. And don't worry, I'll give you the link to it right after, so if you want to try it and test it for yourself, you're going to see it more clearly. The next step here, let's go next. Next step here is that we're going to require the consumer to convey the user's intentions. So here to give how he's going to intend to use any kind of asset. So in this case, you can see it's hard to read, but you can see on the action that it's play, so ODRL play. And so it's the same actions from the offer policy. And therefore, if you go next to the next step, we can see that an agreement has been reached, and then there's an ODRL agreement that has been reached between the consumer and the provider. So yeah, you can go ahead and you can play with this kind of demonstration tool, just to give you an idea, just to understand better. But we're definitely working on some kind of more complete implementation. But yeah, with the ODRL and all the requirements, it's not necessarily easy to be able to cover all the requirements and all the use cases, all the possibilities. So yeah, that goes right into the next slide, which is a policy reasoning engine. So like I mentioned before, here it's the engine which is just a reference implementation. Like I said, the important part is that which would improve and provide interoperability and like a more semantic match between the policy parties. Here is the most important, but the engine itself is not really relevant to be able to have the same exact engine. So here's just a reference implementation. And you can see like the countless examples we've seen for now with the inputs are the provider offer policy. There's also a consumer set policy in which we get the consumer's intentions. And then there are the consumer verifiable credential, which we evaluate to be able to get a more trustworthy and verifiable data that are evaluated in JSON path in the engine. And then the query is sent using SparkQL to a graph database. And the database itself is augmented, first of all, with the provider as an RDF, the provider's policy as an RDF. And then it also contains an OVC profile and the ODRL ontology. And also worth noting that you can add any kind of ontology you want. If you already have it, or any kind of ontology you are targeting, you can add it, and it would work. And therefore, after the query, if there are any results, then an agreement can be reached. Otherwise, no agreement. Yeah, so next step, like I mentioned, ontologies. You can use and leverage the power of ontologies. Here I just like try to picture and make like a visual representation of the ODRL ontology to be able just to picture what you can do with it. And here specifically more what I'm gonna like showcase on the next slide is the ODRL included in. So like you've seen before, we had some kind of action here that is play. So you can see here that, for example, for 3 actions, we have display, which is included in play, which is itself included in use. So obviously, if a provider offer policy is requiring the action play, that means if the consumer is only willing to display, then it works as well, and it should also result in an agreement. And that's the main point of using ontologies. And this is just obviously a simple use case, but you can have so many kind of uses and possibilities with ontologies. Yeah, quick surprise with the Gaia-X membership credential here that Pierre mentioned this morning, but that we've been working on recently. It's just a Gaia-X attestation for current members, and it can be stored in your wallet using OpenID Connect, so you can try it out. If you have any kind of trouble, feel free to come to me or any of the CTO team for help, and we can assist you. We know it's very, it's still ongoing draft specification, so it can have some issues, but we're working on them, and that's the main point. Yeah, so it's issued a verifiable credential using the members platform single sign-on. And just some few future possibilities that are not done yet, but that we can do with this credential is that it's an alternative to issue legal participant credential on behalf of a member, for example. That could be a possibility. Also, it could be used, for example, for role-based access control, either within an organization or a data space or whatever. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So what's next is we're gonna be working on libraries to provide more production-ready libraries. But like I said, it's not like an easy task, and we usually like to first of all look at the current implementations and what are the existing state of art, in case we don't like create a whole lot from nothing and it's just another specification or just another implementation. There are already a lot of them out there. And yeah, so go ahead and try the academy courses and the test apply ground that you've seen in the presentation. And yeah, get your Gaia-X membership credential. And feel free to definitely reach out during the event or afterward. Feel free to contact on Slack or email or whatever. And yeah, that's all. Just some links that you can get after when the presentation is shared. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Yassir. I think that was a good start for after lunch. So
I hope people are at least awake a little bit now.